In 1491, a prince was born into England's Tudor dynasty. His name was Henry. From the very beginning, people believed this boy would grow into a wise and noble ruler. He was handsome, athletic, intelligent, and charming. He loved music, dancing, and hunting. The people adored him. Women admired his beauty. Courtiers praised his brilliance. But beneath that glittering surface burned a dangerous fire, a hunger for power, a thirst for control, and an obsession that would one day turn him into one of the cruelest kings the world has ever known. In 1509, at just 17 years old, Henry ascended the throne of England. His reign began with splendor, but behind the golden crown lay a man who believed nothing and no one could stand in the way of his desires. Henry married Catherine of Aragon, a Spanish princess. She was loyal, graceful, and deeply devoted to him. For years she stood by his side, enduring every trial. But Henry's heart demanded one thing above all else, a son. A male heir who would continue the Tudor line. Catherine bore him many children, but most died in infancy. In the end, only one child survived, a daughter, Mary. To Henry, this was failure. His heart grew cold toward Catherine. In public, she was still the queen. But in his eyes, she was nothing but a broken vessel, a wife who could not give him what he wanted. Soon Henry's gaze fell on another woman, Anne Boleyn. She was young, intelligent, and dangerously captivating. Henry was consumed by desire. He showered her with gifts, promises, and devotion. He whispered of marriage, of a throne beside him. But there was one obstacle. Catherine still lived. Henry demanded a divorce. He appealed to the Pope in Rome, asking permission to end his marriage. The Pope refused, and so Henry revealed the darkness within him. He declared, "If the Church will not bend for me, then I will break the Church itself." With one decision, Henry tore England away from the Catholic faith. He created the Church of England, placing himself as its supreme head. Monasteries were closed. Priests and monks who resisted were imprisoned or executed. Religious houses were burned to the ground. For the sake of one woman, Henry shattered centuries of faith. The nation trembled. What kind of man would defy God himself for his desires? England now knew the answer. At last, Henry married Anne. At first, it was passion and joy. He believed she would finally give him the son he craved. But when she gave birth to a daughter, the future Queen Elizabeth, Henry's fury returned. Whispers began to spread in the court. Accusations of adultery, treason, even witchcraft, lies carefully planted, all pointing to Anne. But in Henry's England, the king's word was law. In 1536, Anne Boleyn was dragged to the Tower of London. Thousands gathered in silence as she mounted the scaffold. She wore a crimson gown, her face pale but calm. With one swift stroke of the sword, her head was severed from her body. The crowd gasped, but Henry felt nothing. He had destroyed the woman for whom he had once torn apart a kingdom. Anne was not the last. Henry would go on to marry 6 times. And for his wives, the marriage bed was more like a death sentence. Jane Seymour finally gave him a son, Edward. But she died in childbirth, leaving Henry to mourn briefly before turning back to his desires. Anne of Cleves, a German princess, was chosen for alliance. But upon seeing her, Henry sneered, "She is ugly." He humiliated her, divorced her, and sent her away in disgrace. Catherine Howard, a teenage girl, became his 5th wife. Young, lively, and naive. But when Henry accused her of adultery, she too was led to the block. Her head fell as the people watched in horror. Catherine Parr was his 6th and final wife. She, alone survived, but only because Henry himself died before he could destroy her too. The people whispered in fear. To be Henry's wife is not a blessing, it is a curse. Henry's cruelty stretched far beyond his wives. In his court, no man was safe. His ministers and advisors lived in constant terror. One day, Henry would call a man loyal, shower him with rewards. The next day, that same man would be dragged to the tower, condemned as a traitor, his head displayed on the castle walls. Friends, nobles, priests, no one could trust him. His rage was sudden, his punishments merciless. In the streets of London, people dared not speak his name above a whisper. His very shadow haunted them. Torture chambers groaned with screams. Fires blazed with the bodies of those who resisted. Henry ruled not with love, but with pure, unrelenting fear. By the end of his life, the once handsome king was a grotesque monster. Obesity consumed him. His legs were riddled with ulcers that oozed pus and stank of death. He could barely walk, carried on a throne by servants. Yet even in this decayed state, his cruelty did not end. From his sickbed, he signed death warrants. From his chambers, he ordered executions. His appetite for blood, for control, never faded. Finally, in 1547, death claimed him. The kingdom breathed a sigh of relief. Some wept for their king, but most whispered with trembling voices. The tyrant is gone. The king who butchered his wives, crushed his church, and drowned his nation in blood is finally dead. Henry VIII left behind more than a crown. He left behind a trail of broken queens, a nation torn from its faith, and a legacy of terror. To this day, history does not remember him as a hero, nor as a noble ruler. It remembers him as something darker. Henry VIII was not merely a king. He was cruelty itself, wearing a crown,